Hey guys, welcome to another voiceover tutorial. My name's Akemi-chan, and this voiceover tutorial we're going to be talking about how to add drama to your character, whether that is adding different types of lighting to your character or just simply tweaking around with the background. Alright, so let's get started. First of all, so I took a part of a painting that I did a long time ago, and we're gonna use that. And what I did is I tweaked it as much as I can to make it the less prominent. Basically, I just made everything a little more dull so we can kind of just add more drama to the character throughout this tutorial. So let's get started. I hope everybody's having a good time and having a good day. Alright, so excuse me. So pretty much we're gonna start off with a gray background. I'm not sure what you guys are more used to, but basically if you have a normal painting with little contrast or just simply want to add more drama to your piece, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna just leave that there for reference, and we're gonna move on to a few methods we can start by adding drama to our character. So a very simple way to add more drama to your character is by just simply tweaking around with the background. Sorry guys, I just recovered from a cold, so my voice is still kinda scratchy. Okay, so background wise, what can we do to make the character more focused? Alright, we can first start by playing around with the background. Let's say, for example, the background, we could make it either darker or brighter than the character. Now, usually when I kind of want to play around with the background, I will be using a airbrush. So usually prefer a bigger brush so that I can cover all the canvas, and also turn the hardness down to 0% so it's airbrush setting. And then usually I would like to go into the brush setting as well and make sure that transfer, the option here, is on, both set to pen pressure, so it's very soft when you paint, kind of like this. And notice how it's very light the way I'm applying the darker color on the upper side. Just press your pen just a little bit for that, because if you press it too hard it's going to be more prominent. And right now we just want to subtly kind of just gradient a nice dome effect over the character like this. Immediately, as you can see, immediately it kind of already starts to add a bit of drama to the character, which is basically making her pop out a bit more. So that is one way of doing it, and see how simple that was, just adjusting the color of the background slightly, or just darken certain parts of it. Now there's different effects that can happen. I mean, if you want, you can make the whole background dark, and yes, that does make the character stand out immediately. That is definitely your choice, of course, up to you guys. These are just some of the ways to kind of add drama to your piece. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just pick a light color, and again I'm gonna use the airbrush to just kind of brush on the bottom side as well. And again, I'm using my eyedrop tool to pick up the color up top, the darker color. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of creating kind of like a spotlight over her, and this is, again, you guys don't need to do the same thing. I mean, different pieces require different shapes of you know, like gradient to your background, but the main thing to keep in mind is just to make sure the character pops out. As you can see in the original, version, the background is very flat and it's almost kind of blending into this little dragon here as well as her clothes. So in order to make your character pop out, we gotta kind of add more shadow or highlight to your background so that your character will pop out on all sides. So as you can see, if we follow the character, um, we can see the outline clearly. Unlike here, it's a little less clear, but here it's very clear because the background is very dark, so it makes the character pop out. And usually keep that in mind for silhouetting. You have to, usually I like to make sure all the silhouette pops out. So now I'm just adding a little bit of a shadow underneath her just to make him more grounded. The brush I'm using is again standard round brush. We're gonna be using the standard round brush throughout this tutorial just to keep it simple. Of course, if you have other brushes, definitely use whatever brush you want. I always think that brushes isn't what makes you paint better, it's how you use your brush. It's how you use your brush, so pretty much any brush can be just as awesome. Anyhow, I'm just kind of blending in the shadow a bit more, dragging it over here a little bit. So gonna refine this area. You can also switch your brush to airbrush by just lowering down the hardness setting to 0%. So now you have airbrush, and usually I like to use the airbrush to blend after I've used the solid round brush. That way it keeps a bit of that sharpness. Okay, now I'm going to add a bit more lightness in the back just so the shadow would pop out a bit more. Alright, there we go. So already she is looking like she is more focused on and more more contrast to the piece. You can see her pop out a bit more. So now what we can do is usually I like to play around with the character contrast, so immediately we can jump into image adjustments, color balance, and start tweaking around with the sliders. Yeah. What can we do to make this more interesting dynamic? So maybe we can just make it lighter a little bit, and then we can duplicate this layer, your character layer. I usually like to duplicate the character layer and go into adjustments, and we're gonna go into brightness on contrast, and let's tone that up a lot, somewhat like this. Now if you zoom out, already the character is pretty much standing out. This is what I had to start with, pretty let's just say less eye-catching than the fourth step we have here, only cause we lighten up the character, also darken the background, so it creates more contrast as well as adding more drama to your piece. Then what we're gonna do is take the erase tool, and we're just gonna kind of erase down certain parts of it because we don't want all our character to be super bright, and just kind of keep a bit of that highlight. So we're just going to brighten up the section here pretty much, and once we're happy with that, we can merge it down to our character. So yeah, that's usually how I do kind of try to when I try to add more interest to my character or piece. I play around with contrast a lot and making sure that the character stands out most of all. Alright, let's see what else we can do to make this more dramatic. So up until now we've only done a lot of adjustments, but now we're gonna go in and start painting a bit. So let's try to see what we can create here to make the piece a bit more dynamic. I'm just gonna just put another layer. I'm gonna call it highlight. Cause let's add a bit of highlight to this. Actually, we can start off with shadow. Shadow is it's better to layer shadow first, then highlight. That way you can highlight inside the shadow as well. So we're gonna start off with a shadow, and there's a few ways to add shadow. You can go ahead and put your layer to multiply, or you can simply paint on top, which I suggest you guys try both ways, but for this tutorial we're gonna just put our layer on multiply. Pick a kind of light gray for the shadow, and we're just going to start adding some shadow. So again, with our light gray, our standard round brush, we are going to add a bit of shadow to our character. So let's start like this. And of course, we can tweak around with it. So we just added some more shadow to our piece. Alright. Add shadow to your character. Try to think a bit logically, as in if you want to add shadow underneath your character, just think of where the shadow would be casted and the dimension of where it's casted, as well as just follow the general shadow you have going on with your character as well. For example, if the majority of my shadow is on this side, I will try to add more shadow on that side. So trying to keep that consistent. Okie dokie. So excuse me, we just added a bit more shadow. Pretty much. Let's see what we had. Step before we had this. Now I am just trying to kind of ground her a bit more to the background. That's why I'm adding a bit more shadow here. Okay, so that's the character shadow, kind of character slash background shadow, trying to ground the character to the piece. Now we are going to add the highlights. So add the highlights. Step 6. So shadow layer, and then now we have the light layer. So first of all, what can we do? Let's start out with something basic. Usually a good way to kind of add more drama to your character is just to highlight around the character, as in the silhouette. Sort of like this. Kind of like a rim light, nice rim light for your character. So we can start out by doing that. Just gonna make my brush a little bigger. And we can also give the dragon a bit of rim light as well. So already you can kind of see, if we zoom out, it already starts to add a bit of drama to our piece, right? So we're just gonna keep adding a bit more of it. Again, see how I'm going over the dragon and highlighting the girl's hair. It's because they are two different entities and sometimes you wanna make sure to highlight both of them. So just a bit of it here and there. Normally we would just highlight it outside the silhouette of the two characters because that's what makes more sense. So we're highlighting outside of it. Alright, let's keep highlighting and notice how I don't highlight consistently. I'm highlighting a little bit here and there, trying to add a bit of variation in the line strength and the line weight. So some of the lines are thin compared to others that are slightly thicker. That adds a bit more variation to your piece. So usually try to do that a bit more, but also you can experiment by adding even weight as well for highlight around. So we always want to choose a brighter color to do this type of thing. So I'm adding a white line here as well around the dragon's tail. The reason being the tail is an entirely different part. It's not attached to the girl, so technically if the light is casting from here, it would also hit the tail a little bit, right? So got that. Gonna erase this arrow and we're gonna put a bit on her arm here for the same sort of logic as the tail. The light, if it's coming from over here, it will cast a little bit on her arm. Of course her hair will be hit a little bit as well. So we have a very basic highlighted line here. Now what else we can do is just make the brush size a little bigger, turn down the hardness so it's almost like airbrush, and let's put our brush mode to overlay. Once we put our brush mode to overlay, we can gently, let's pick a color. I would like to go with a warm tone since her hair is warm and I want to pair off the lighting with a warm tone. So we can gently brush along the line like this. So it creates like a nice glow. Now you can do this all around wherever you have the rim light lines, or you can just add it to certain areas, which just adds some variation to it so it doesn't look like your character's bombarded with really bright rim light. So we did that. Now let's zoom out and check out what we have. So if we zoom out a lot, we can kind of see the process. First, the basic starting point with a kind of dull-ish background, and the character is not as standing out as what we have in our recent step here. There's a number of factors to factor in. First, our background is it has more variation. It has a nice gradient which kind of frames the character pretty well, and then we kind of adjusted the contrast of the character, and as well as adding a bit of a highlight to her. And then we added a shadow layer. Now this is with and without. with the shadow layer looks a lot more grounded, right? And last but not least, we have a rim light. So yeah, this is a pretty simple ways of adding a bit more drama to your character without having to kind of do too much. So these are all very technical steps, not necessarily involving any sort of painting. Once you have a good base going like this, once you have a good base going, just start doing these steps and it will add a bit more drama to your character. Yep. Now, what else can we do? Well, we can also think about other stuff such as not necessarily applying to every single character, but let's go shadow highlight. So sometimes I like to add highlight within the shadow to create more dimension and more like light reflecting on the character, which creates more drama. So we can start doing that. First of all, the hair, I feel like the hair could use a bit more highlight. So first of all, we gotta make sure not to pick too bright of a color. So usually I like to go in with the eye drop tool and kind of just pick up the color that is already there and just move the color picker a little bit more up towards a brighter color like this. So we can start kind of painting some color in. Whoops, got mode. Again, make sure your mode is in normal. So right off the bat, gonna add a bit of highlight color within the shadow. So this creates a bit more interest in the piece. Of course, you gotta kind of blend that in with the shadow itself to make it look better. And you can kind of erase parts of it if you don't feel like it's working out. I feel like just a bit of it would be good. That's why I have it on another layer, so I can play around with it better. Alright, then next up, what else? We can put a bit of highlight here. Again, I'm on hardness 44%, so it creates some sort of smoothness to it. And I'm going to kind of erase parts of it because it was getting a bit too soft for me, so I used the erase tool to kind of create harder edges. Alright, let's continue to do that. We can add a bit more highlight to maybe the dragon within the shadow area, so on this side perhaps, and maybe his neck. See, I've already got a bit of it going on in my original painting, so we're gonna just continue that off. Usually you would add this kind of underneath the shadow and make sure to blend those in properly. Maybe add a bit more here. Now I am kind of going with the color palette of what the character already has. So if your dragon is kind of like a grayish color, then the highlight within the shadow should be something similar, unless you have some crazy lighting going on, which then you can pick whatever color you want. But I think for starters, something simple, it should be a similar color to what your character already has. Man, sorry guys, it's really hard to talk with my voice still recovering from the cold, so bear with me. So yeah, funny thing is, I was sick for 2 weeks, then I got better, and then I guess I was really happy I got better, so I started eating like not ice cream, chocolate, because I really love chocolate. So I started eating. I was like, yes, I'm better. I can't wait, because I couldn't eat chocolate or any of that stuff, right? So I just ate it, and then a few days after I started coughing really badly, and then I got sick again. So yeah, that was pretty bad. I don't know why. Maybe I caught cold twice, or well, yeah, twice, and all because I ate a bit of chocolate. It's pretty bad, right? Anyways, what I did is kind of add a bit of a shadow to her arm, and I want to make this highlight a bit more intense. Actually, gotta make sure that it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. In this case, I don't think it works that well, and it's all for you to determine. For me, I didn't like as much, but it might work for your case, in your case, so definitely try that out. Okay, what else can we do here? I feel like there needs to be a bit of an interesting highlight going on here. So now, see that this dragon has like fins, and this is a really good opportunity to add more like highlight and variation into your piece, because you can be like, his wing is transparent, right? In this case, we're gonna add really cool highlight within his wing fins. So let's just say they're transparent. So how I like to handle that is I use the lasso tool and just selected the areas I want the highlight to come from. So let's get started. Just add a bit of highlight. Of course, we can use different colors, see which color is better. Now, I feel like this color might work a little better. It's darker, but it's less, it's not as abrupt, so, but at the same time it's really vibrant, so it adds a interesting touch to the piece. Now I'm slowly kinda erasing parts of it. Now I'm gonna go into the mode, go into color dodge, and maybe we can have it like really, oops, maybe it's got like veins or something. Just add that texture in. But this is all because we want to add more drama to the piece. So deselect it, and let's continue on, add more highlight along this line, kinda just outlining the fin. And of course we can take this opportunity to highlight this character here a bit more. And of course he's got other fins, so we can add the same treatment to his other fins as well. I'm still on mode color dodge, and the color I picked is orange. Usually if you want the mode to be on color dodge, I recommend picking a color that is not dark and not too bright, so that color dodge can layer on top of that. It's hard to explain, but just trust me guys. Then again, you guys can always try it for yourselves. And it's kind of hard to explain. Anyways, we're gonna have a bit of it here. And maybe a bit of it here. Just adding some more interest in the piece. Maybe we get some intense light peeking through there and there, and we can add it here as well. So all around, this dragon seems to have some really intense looking fins. So usually you'll want to kind of find opportunity to add something like this to your piece. Usually it works really well if your piece is looking really monotone, kind of like really dull color palette wise, like grayish, and then you would just pick one really bright color, intense color, and just pop it on there just to spice it up. It doesn't work as well if you have too much color going on. It will just look too much. But if your basic color palette is very, you know, monotone, single or two color palette, then it will look really nice. Kind of like in this case, it's looking pretty interesting so far. We can also add a bit of it within her hair, or not. Never mind, doesn't look as good. And you can always try it out. It's always nice to try stuff out, right? Can add it to her ear though. Her ear seems like an interesting place to add this type of highlight. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting way of adding drama to your piece. Actually, take that off. Alright then. Now that that's done, actually we can add some more drama. Let's call it glow. Now this layer we're gonna make it into overlay, and we're just gonna go into airbrush mode and kinda pick a light color and just highlight certain parts like that. Maybe a bit on her hair too. So all this does is kind of making certain areas brighter or darker depending on what you want, and in our case we want it to be brighter. We can add it a bit down here and here as well, and up here too. Oh, I noticed that my mode is on color dodge. Sometimes that works. If that works, we're just gonna keep it as it is. Adding a bit of highlight here and there. There we go. So now if we zoom out, it's getting more and more interesting, right? Yeah, it's getting a little more interesting. So we're adding more highlight to our piece. Maybe add a bit of it underneath her face and hand here. Maybe take that off. That's way too intense. Maybe add more highlight here. Alright then, there we go. Oops. Why did that? What happened? Whoops. Anyways, there we go. Alright then. So, in just a few steps, we've gone from this to this. And these are all great ways to improving your character and just framing your character better. So now that our character is standing out pretty well, we can go back to the background and see what else we can do. There's a lot of things that we can do actually. First of all, we could play around with the lighting of the background. Let's say add more stuff, as in make sure other stuff is going on. Maybe we start adding a bit more color to it, like I could start adding a bit of, you know, maybe grass, maybe, just to, just so the background isn't too empty. So we can start doing that, and maybe like something is, actually I'm thinking that this is a dandelion or something. But I think it actually works out. If we can make this dandelion kind of glowing, then it would make more sense that there is kind of light coming up above. So that's actually interesting. So just gonna go on and start painting. So basically with the background, the ones, you can start off with a pretty simple background, like a flat background with nothing going on. But then later on, you could also think about adding different elements. Now, what element? I'm not sure, but always think about it, and if you're not sure what you want, then maybe some inspirational Google search would help. Sometimes it helps me actually. But for now, we're going to kind of go and try to paint kind of like a dandelion. I don't think it's turning out too well, but I think you guys get the point here. I'm gonna make the stem kind of like a greenish color, like this, and I want to make sure it's dark. Maybe add leaves. Actually, not leaves. Yeah, leaves. And again, gonna go in with a highlight color. Like this. And of course, I still want to try to get my grass going. My grass is gonna be kind of like pretty, like a weed color, or something like that. And then we can add some small details here and there. Pretty much trying to see what I can do to blend in all this. If we zoom out, let's see. Well, it's certainly interesting enough. But this part is all about painting, and I can't really go too much into this, but I can say that background will go into making your character more dynamic. So whatever background it is, make sure that it suits the character, makes a little bit of sense. It doesn't need to make too much sense. And the color should work together. The reason why I picked these color is because I wanted to kind of pair up with whatever color I have already. So this is the color that is paired up. Alright, then now what else can we do? I'm going to make the dandelion a bit more bright. So pretty simple. Went into my mode. I recommend any of these. Color dodge, screen overlay. These are good for adding that extra kick of brightness to your piece, like this. It's pretty easy to use and it's pretty fun, so you guys experiment with that. There are many different ways to add highlight, and that is one of them. Let's see if we can make it feel like there's parts of it that's detached. Like that. Alright. I can probably do that. Now let's kind of blend in the leaf a bit more because it's not blending very well. Let's make the bottom side more obvious. Make that darker. And just blend that in. Alright, so now if we zoom out, it's starting to get there. It's actually looking pretty interesting. I might want to take this in the end and refine it a bit more. Now I'm gonna lock down the layer because I just want to add a bit more shadow to the grass here. So making it darker, and then I want to add highlights. So sometimes I like to do that, you know, kind of make everything darker just to be able to add highlight after, because usually it's better that way. It's easier to layer highlight on top of shadow. So keep that in mind, at least for me anyways. I like to layer highlights after shadow. It's just easier for me to work with. So yeah. Step 8. Now what else can we do to make it more dramatic or more magical? It's actually already looking pretty magical, which is good. I'm happy. What else can we do? Well, we could add some interesting, maybe we could add some color to the background now that we have pretty much everything going on. Maybe test out what type of color would look good in this color. So typically if you have orange in your piece, good color to work with orange is blue. So let's try that out. But actually we can keep it orangish, and just make sure the dark part is blue. Maybe we could have some I'm not sure what. Sometimes it gets confusing. I'm not actually sure what I'm gonna do, but it's good to experiment. So I'm just trying to see what color works best. Let's go for dark like this. Oh, maybe we could do something like the dandelions casting light upon the character or something. Maybe something like this, like a light source. Maybe something like this. And of course gotta make sure that it's blended properly. Make it darker around the edges. Darken here. Maybe have rays of light here and there. Some random rays. Let's zoom out, check, see. You know, I'm not sure if we need that, like maybe someone like this. I don't know. Sometimes there's a lot of experimentation going on with me with my backgrounds to see what works and what doesn't, and I think it's a good thing that you would experiment this much, because then the more you experiment, the more you'll get used to the tool that you're using, which is good. Perhaps we can go on and add some, you know, little black dots. They're like shadow for the dust shadow. Now we could also have little light speckles. Usually that's a good way to add more drama to your piece. And she could be, you know, magical. Or at least the dragon could be magical. Let's see. With, without. Now once you have the background done on a separate layer, you can also kind of play around with it. To see if it would look better or not. You know. Oh my gosh. This is pretty dark. I'm actually not sure about the background, because it could work either way, so it's not really a serious issue. Perhaps we can add more drama by maybe there are these firefly thingies around. Gonna go into color dodge so I can layer on top of that. Let's kind of make it in a pattern so it surrounds the girl. I'm feeling a bit brighter, so let's create a pattern that goes kind of like this, surrounds the girl. Actually no, I don't like it. Maybe just a little bit. And we can make some of it glow. Like that. It's not really necessary, but it does create some sort of detail in your piece. Sometimes it works better for different scenarios. In this case, I don't feel it offers anything different. Maybe something like this, and we can see if a color change would make this more interesting. Definitely does make it more interesting, actually. The blue really contrasts nicely with the orange. Maybe this sort of color palette. And then we could probably make it more blue on the bottom side, like that, and keep it dark on the bottom. Oh wow. Keep it dark on the bottom. And we could add more details. Just add a bit more details. So after you're almost done with your piece, what happens next is always just to add a bit more details to it, just small little details. Like very lightly go in with a highlighting color and start adding small small details, kind of like this. It adds a small variation and it catches your eyes somewhat. It doesn't need to be very prominent, because having too much prominent thing in your piece will be more distracting than complementing. So just going in with a really light highlight and adding some small details to it to make the whole thing more interesting. Alright, so if we zoom out, it's getting there. So what can we do for our final step to make it dramatic, more dramatic? Step 10. Usually after everything is done, I do like to do a general adjustment, general color adjustment and everything else. So you guys can do that, apply a general adjustment to your piece. There's so many ways of approaching it. I think this color works pretty well-ish. Maybe lower it a bit. And I like to add more lights to it. So let's go into lighten, and actually let's go for this color and brighten certain part of the character. Maybe here as well. Kind of just apply a bit of that green tone. Now it looks very misty. We're gonna erase some of that so it doesn't get too out of hand there. Lower it and then apply contrast. Oops. Erase the areas you want to keep. Like that. And there you have it. We have made our starter piece more dramatic. Now this step I like to do is pretty much I like to kind of merge everything down into one piece and just do a general adjustment to it like that. And then I do like to sharpen that up nicely. So sharpen that up like that. So yeah, there you have it. We have, I will just move this, actually, yeah, I'll move this up so you can see what the difference is. So we added a bit more drama to our piece by a few factors. Background, the rim line around the characters, some interesting color play, adding like really intense color somewhere, like very bright color to stand out, as well as playing around with the highlights of the piece as well. Like the dandelion lamp here was a good addition to making this piece more dramatic. Just whatever you can find in your that makes sense added to your background to make your character stand out a bit more. And of course, always I like to try to keep my character's outline visible at all times from the background so that they stand out, and make sure the background complements it. Anyways, that was that for this tutorial. I showed some pretty simple, I would say, steps to follow to kind of add more drama to your piece or character. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that. And I'm pretty sure some of you are sick, so I hope you guys get well. It's a really bad, well, a really common season to catch a cold out there. So be careful. Cough with your arm up against your face, and yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys I hope you this tutorial was helpful to you guys. And I will see you guys next time in our voiceover tutorial. So yeah, have a great day guys, and see you guys soon.